Hey everyone, Tom here. Quick disclaimer for this episode. When Joe recorded this, he had a new webcam plugged into his computer. He had never recorded with this webcam plugged in before, so he was not aware that Audacity had automatically selected the new webcam as the mic. So his audio is going to be a little worse than usual. It's fine, it's listenable, and besides, this is a Guesto episode. He's not the star anyway. That out of the way, let's get to the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Anime Sickos. What's that? Well, don't you know? It's the podcast for geniuses, and the only podcast. Look at your podcast app. Are there others? No. If there are, open a support ticket. It's broken. We at Anime Sickos take a look at the four pillars of modern misery: anime, gaming, posting, and jobs. I'm Tom in Anime Sicko.
I am Joe in Anime Sicko. Tom is extra playful today because he's very tired.
It's true. Fuck. I went to the DMV today, folks, and I don't know if you've been to the DMV in pandemic times. It is much like going to the DMV at any time in that it sucks and you get corona. You got corona before the pandemic. It just was born there. It fucking sucks. I had to stand outside for an hour and a half, but it doesn't. You know what doesn't suck is what's happening right now. Because Joe, it would be one thing if I had to make an Anime Sickos episode with just you. Ugh, disgusting.
Yeah.
My hated rival.
Yeah.
But no, that's not happening today. What's happening, Joe?
We have a wonderful guest today. Wonderful guest. Would you like to introduce yourself? Will you jump through from the shadows and say hello?
Yes, I'm prepared. Hi, I'm Angela Quinton, and I prepped harder for this podcast than I have for any job interview, and I learned a new JavaScript framework for my last job interview.
That makes us feel really flattered. Rest assured, the bar is so low. It's like so low.
But also at the same time, you're right to do that because it is less that you're right to prep a lot for this show, and it's more that you're right to have contempt for jobs.
Yeah.
So Angela, what's your deal? What's your whole gist?
Well, I make a lot of mistakes in life and punish myself by running a lot. That's kind of my main deal. I'm a long distance runner. And when I'm not doing that, I'm at my cog job on the computer all day long. And when I'm not doing either of those things, I make a lot of werewolf-related stuff. Werewolves are kind of like the thing that my brain slotted into when I was young is the thing to be kind of like super focused on through my whole life. So I make a website where I post about werewolf movies and books and things that are coming out called werewolfnews.com, and I make collaborative digital anthology of comics and short stories and artwork and poems called Werewolves Versus, which I think is at 9 issues now and something like 250,000 words in it so far. So those are the main things that consume my life over the last decade or so.
I really admire the sort of clarity of purpose to like be a little kid and be like, you know what my thing is, and stick with it. Because like when I was like 5 and I'm like, you know what my thing is? Fire trucks. And that didn't stick.
Yeah. I'm not as into my rock tumbler as I used to be. A little less into that than I was when I was a kid.
Well, it's comforting to have that focus, but it's also kind of frightening to recognize that it was really just a roll of the dice. Like it could have been anything. It could have been, it could have been like succulent plants or shapes of clouds or something. So the fact that it's werewolves and that there seems to be a lot of fun things you can do with that concept and that creature is just lucky, I guess.
Yeah.
As a fascination, it's got like a deep lore. You have a bunch of goodies already waiting for you.
And it also, and like yes to apply our perfect games rubric to it, but like with werewolves, you got builds because you got like different sort of different schools of werewolf of lycanthropy.
You have like infinite builds.
Exactly. Like so many werewolves are like, what part it most transforms? Like, what part of the wolf physiology are we focusing on? You can pick. There's any number.
That is definitely a fun aspect of it, but it's also something that you can get really wrong, apparently, and then you get yelled at a whole lot for like liking the wrong thing or liking it wrong.
Oh, can I ask the question? Do they have to be bipedal? Do they have to be bipedal to be a werewolf?
Ooh, that is definitely a hot button topic.
Ooh,
I say,
yes.
I couch everything that I say with by saying that it's a preference that I have and that I'm open to like pretty much anything. But there is a right way to do werewolves, and they've got to be bipedal, because otherwise you can have them capable of moving on all fours, but they have to stand at some point. Otherwise, they're just weird-looking wolves. And that's
just a dog person.
Yeah, it's just a guy who turned into a wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an anamorph is what it is, actually.
Yeah. No, there's all kinds of ways that you can like a werewolf incorrectly. You can prefer them with or without tails. You can prefer them to have digitigrade legs, like a dog type legs, where they're like walking on their toes, or plantigrade, where they walk like a person. You can, if you really want to get yelled at for really obscure stuff, you can get into conversations about like what color their nails should be, or what causes the transformation, which is really great when you get people who are arguing really intently and really seriously about whether like the gravity that the moon exerts on the earth is enough to mess with chemical content of your blood, when it's a fictional creature. Like, it's just made up. It's just pretend, and it's supposed to be fun. So in that sense, it could also be a job where you have rules and ways that a boss somewhere can yell at you for doing it wrong.
Yeah, that's fandom, really. At the core of it is there's a thing that you like and that brings you joy, and then you and a bunch of people are like, what if we became the boss of this? Like, pretty soon I feel like Anime Sickos is going to reach a critical mass where, like, there's a similar sort of thing, like, you can like Anime Sickos wrong. Like, if you're like, I like when they do little skits in the cold open, everyone gets so fucking mad at you. They're like, the skits are the worst part. Everyone hates the skits.
Yeah.
So I gotta ask the question. Everybody gets the question. Angela, do you consider yourself an anime sicko?
I do, but I don't know if I came by it honestly.
Ooh, I don't know how it's possible to come by it dishonestly. Tell me more.
Well, you know how in the 1940s at Los Alamos they were doing all sorts of experiments with nuclear materials?
I wasn't there, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
I have an alibi.
Well, they were messing with like the cores of nuclear bombs, essentially, and they were extremely reckless doing this. Twice in less than a year, there were goof-ups that caused bad accidents with radioactivity, and the people involved died. Both times, there were security guards there, right next to where these goofballs were poking at giant chunks of plutonium with screwdrivers. And in both accidents, those security guards got irradiated, but they turned out mostly fine. And in this case, Los Alamos is my childhood. The nuclear cores are anime with all my friends poking at it, and I'm a security guard. So, like, I'm mostly okay, but I was so close to anime for so long that I don't know if I could claim to not be an anime sicko. But I don't know a lot about it other than what I was exposed to as a kid.
This makes me think of after Goku uses the Super Saiyan God transformation for the first time, and he loses it, and he finds out that there's latent power stuck inside him all the time now because he did it once. And that's kind of what I'm hearing.
I gotta ask, what was it? Like, what was the exposure? What was your plutonium?
The very first one, I think, was Ninja Scroll. When I was definitely way too young to be watching Ninja Scroll.
That was like the definitive, like, adults are not here chaos movie.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I'm old enough to watch Ninja Scroll. I haven't watched it yet. I can easily, but I'm scared.
And it is one of those things that, like, I literally don't know how it got into the house. Like, I've got a sibling who I think just a VHS copy materialized in his hand one day, and then it was just in the VCR, and we were watching it and being very afraid that our parents were going to come home.
It's like,
yeah.
I love movies like that. Did you also have the experience where like you worried that like the TV would remember, like there'd be a sense memory on the screen, and like they could tell that like some serious shit was getting shown by this.
Yeah. There's lingering after effects. Yeah, but yeah. So there was Ninja Scroll. Things like the Miyazaki films started to show up. I saw Akira a couple of times. I had no idea what was going on in Akira, but knew that it was very important.
I feel like that's sort of the consensus.
Yeah.
He turns into a horrible beast. That's what happens. That's the movie.
Helsing is something that I think I've managed to find on the back of an internet truck at some point.
I love Helsing. I'm such a Helsing nerd. I don't know what it is about it, because it's like try-hard, cringy goth shit, but I love it. I don't give a shit. I should hate it so much.
I should hate it because it's about Draculas. It's about the Dracula.
Yeah.
And as a werewolf person, that's not cool. But like I liked it.
Yeah, and like I think there is like a bad guy who is a werewolf. If I remember correctly. Yeah, it's Helsing is just like, do you want to read a comic where a bunch of people make crazy eyes and have glasses in front of them? Because that's like just it. That's like all he does is he loves to draw that silhouette of like frames so it looks like they are completely opaque.
Yep.
To be clear, it kicks ass and he should never stop. Like I get it.
Do they ever do the thing where like someone does a badass like move with like a sword or something, and then they're in the end pose and they're standing still, and then they just push their like tiny round glasses up?
Yeah. There's a fucking bayonet loving priest who like loves. He's got the slipperiest glasses. He's always pushing them up.
This MF needs to go to the optometrist and get him adjusted.
Yeah.
Isn't there a butler with similar glasses who does a really amazing thing with like a microfilament thread who does the glasses thing and also the thing where he just moves around a whole lot and his opponent seems fine and they just sort of stand there for a minute and then the opponent just falls into a pile of meat?
Oh yeah, his weapon is he has a bunch of very thin piano wire wrapped around his hands, so like he'll like run and like just turn people into cubes. And then, of course, push up his glasses. He's also like a very old man. Also, I think everyone in Helsing has glasses.
You're right.
Actually, I think the only character that doesn't is the police woman who becomes a vampire in like the first issue. I think she's the only non-glasses haver.
I just gotta say, going back to the sort of fight you were describing before, personally, if I'm ever in a fight and I'm standing still and feeling normal, that's when I'm gonna be most afraid, because I'm gonna be like definitely gonna fall into cubes like right
now. No one better put their sword away or I'm dead.
Hey, keep that sword out. Keep that sword out. I feel normal and I want to keep it that way.
Yeah.
I did get some Dragon Ball Z exposure during college, but that was mostly because my stoner roommate would just wake up, roll over, light a joint, and just turn on Dragon Ball Z. It was just on constantly.
Like, did he have a DVD, or was his life scheduled very well?
I think we had a TV channel that was just Dragon Ball Z all the time for some reason.
I need to get to Canada.
He manifested this channel out of pure force of will.
Yeah.
He manifested that channel and a lot of weed just constantly.
He sounds like an auramancer. Like he can just project his will into objects.
Yeah. So between that and hearing it talked about on this show and on Shuffle Quest, I feel like I've gotten a reasonable amount of exposure to Dragon Ball Z.
Dragon Ball Z is sort of like the lead paint of anime. It's like it's everywhere. It's affected everyone in a way that's definitely noticeable, but it's so widespread that's like, why even call out? We all have brain damage. It happened.
We need to see the Dragon Ball exposure graph.
So Angela, you mentioned this previously, briefly. I'm going to force you to speak about it in more detail. Force is a weird word because you wrote this as a thing to talk about on the document of topics to talk about. It's you do ultra marathoning. You run very far. Normally when I run a little bit. But 3 miles, well, that's the max. Not so for you. What's your max?
My max to date is 50K, which is 31 miles, I think. Before the Rona shut everything down, I was training to do my first 100K last year.
Jesus.
But yeah, I think having that race canceled was sort of a mercy, because I don't know. I mean, I like to think. I have a great coach, so I'm sure she would have got me ready for it. But it would have been a slog. So yeah, 31 miles is my max right now. Although I'm going for 50, hopefully in August of 2021.
So when you are running and it's like mile 22, does it ever occur to you that you can just stop?
Oh, all the time. It occurs to me shortly after. I think this sucks, and like I should stop doing it. But there's this weird experience in ultra marathoning, and maybe other distances as well, shorter, more rational distances. There's a concept referred to as the pain cave, and that should tell you everything you need to know about how crazy a given sport is. There's just a term like that everyone accepts as, a term of art. And the pain cave is when everything sucks and you're asking yourself, why did I do this? Why won't I let myself stop?
Oh, you mean every waking moment of my life?
Yeah, I live in the pain cave. How do I get out?
Well,
does running involve leaving the pain cave?
The way out is through. That's the magic of the pain cave, is you acknowledge that you're in it and that it sucks and that some previous version of yourself decided that it was a good idea that you go in there. And there will be a future version of yourself that is glad that you were there and that you managed to find your way out. So by mile 22, if you're in the pain cave, or at least if I find that I'm in the pain cave, I just push through, and by mile 23 or 24, then I'm back out for a little while anyway.
So does your stint in the pain cave get shorter as you get more accustomed to this?
I don't think that it does, but I think that one's ability to handle being in it gets better. You're able to give yourself more positive self-talk. You're able to apply yourself with more of the little high-sugar treaties that you've brought along for fuel. You get better at rationalizing things or telling yourself that there's a reason you're doing this, and that eventually, when the sun comes back up and you can see where you're running, you'll remember why.
I think also part of it is just like the first time you're in the pain cave, if I was in the pain cave, like of the real fucking pits, doing my first ultra marathon, and my dumbass brain told myself, like, the only way out is through. If you keep going, it'll get better. I'd just be like, I don't believe you, asshole, and remove my brain. If you've actually escaped from it like multiple times, then like I can see that being like, all right, maybe I believe you.
Part of the help of getting out of a situation, or one of the things that I think is critical to any ultramarathon that I'll ever do anyway, is having other people around. And that is something that I'm like legitimately excited about in terms of like the trail running community, because an ultramarathon can technically be any official race that is longer than a standard 26.2 mile marathon. So you could run a 27 mile ultramarathon on pavement if you wanted. Your body would probably be ruined afterwards, but you could do it. But most of these happen in the woods, in the mountains, someplace where you're in nature, and the focus is usually not on speed, because you're running up and down hills, you're running over roots, it's fairly rugged, rocky terrain. So it becomes more about endurance. And there's this thing that happens with situations where a lot of people are putting themselves through that on purpose. There's a sort of collective mania or high that seems to form, where everybody involved has the biggest smiles on their faces, and no matter how bad your body hurts or how hungry you are or how much you're wishing that you could stop, you're just vibing off everybody else that you're running around, the other runners. You're sharing food with them and water and giving each other encouragement. The staff for the race, the course marshals that are making sure that you run like on the course and not down some canyon and then just never emerge again, they're typically amazing. It's a really fun experience to put yourself through that in an environment where you're doing it and developing a real sense of camaraderie with other people. I don't think that getting out of the pain cave or doing any sort of endurance sport is something that I would be likely to do like on my own. Even this past May, I did a self-directed 50K because the big 100K that I've been training for later that summer was canceled. I just ran 8 loops around a local trail, and the only reason that I didn't quit was because there were other people just out for like a hike or a walk on the trail. There's some parts of it that were fairly groomed, so you'd have like families pushing strollers and stuff, and even just having other people around in that sense really helps the experience become something enjoyable, if only because you know that you're going to see those same people again in 45 minutes and they're going to be wondering, what the fuck is this person doing? They look like they're miserable, and I've seen them like 3 times now and they look worse every time I see them.
This MF in a pain cave. That is a aspect of it that, when you describe it, sounds like a beautiful and so perfect and enjoyable that I literally, I tell you, I never would have thought of that. If you were to ask me, like, is ultra marathoning a extremely solitary activity? I'd be like, yes it is. Because the running that I've done, well, one, it's in fucking Chicago. I love Chicago, but there's no nature. It looks like shit. So I've run on the streets, and it's a supremely lonely experience.
Yeah.
So, like, I've never experienced that, and I never would have thought of that. But, Lord, hearing you describe it sounds good as hell.
It's something that I never thought that I would get into. I started pursuing running 6 or 7 years ago as one of the things that I wanted to try to help deal with depression and also gender dysphoria, and sort of reconciling with the fact that I knew I was trans. I knew it was likely that I was going to transition, but I just wanted to try and see what I could do to develop a better rapport with my body. Road running was an easy thing to do because you just grab a pair of running shoes and just step out your front door and you can do it. So I was just doing road running for the first couple of years, and I worked my way up to doing a marathon. I think it's like the biggest marathon in Western Canada. It's held in Vancouver, where I lived until very recently. And there's something like 20,000 people who are running in this thing, and it's all around like downtown Vancouver and out by the university. There's just people everywhere. And it was still one of the most lonely things I've ever done, because there's just something about road running or running in a city where you're running around like people who are just carrying on their everyday lives while you're exerting yourself in that way that feels very isolating. And I don't know why that is or where it comes from, but I know that when I recognized that having started hormone replacement therapy, one of the amazing things that happens with it is that you lose all your muscles if you're taking feminizing hormones. All those good muscles that you got from having testosterone your whole life, they go away, and that means that your endurance and your ability to run as fast or as far kind of goes away. And I took that as an opportunity to pivot towards a version of running where I could do it in the woods, and it's more about having a good time rather than how fast can you go.
That's fucking great.
Yeah, it's way better than, like, every time I have tried to run or get in the habit of it, the problem is it's missing what you just described, which is like I have my stupid little job where I have my Fisher-Price computer, and then I close it for the day, and then I'm like, well, time to get my exercise, I will run, and it's just like another task that I have to do to not go to, like, cog hell, I guess. I don't really know what'll happen if I don't do it. Like, other than the health reasons, I feel like there's a spiritual component at stake. Because what I'm doing by myself is ultimately, like, very solitary. It's isolating. No one is giving me good vibes to keep running. It's not like a cool remote area.
No one gives me a treaty. I don't get a goodie. Again, to apply our gaming rubric, like, running sucks ass. It's so bad. You do not get exponential scaling. In fact, you go to a pain cave. Like you were saying before, like you didn't know what it is about road running that in a city, especially, that like is such an isolating experience. And as you were saying that, I'm like, my answer would be like, that's just how it is. Like there can't be another way. Like that's just what it is because you are running and like everyone else is standing still or walking, so like you run past them.
Yeah,
that's just how it is.
You're just huffing and puffing as you go past people doing their lives.
I think some of it may have to do with the fact that a lot of big races in cities anyway are sponsored by a big company, or there's a corporate or sort of big business feeling to it where like all the people at the aid stations are wearing like a bank t-shirt, and it just feels like it feels like more cog work in a lot of ways now that I think about it. Whereas at a trail race, at least in the trail races that I've been to on the West Coast, like the aid stations, they're 30 miles out in the middle of nowhere. Like they literally had to take 4x4s to get to them and then camp there overnight just to be there to like, give you, your essentials, like an energy gel or some Gatorade or something. But they have like pizza and like homemade cookies and like sushi at some of these aid stations. It's like every one of them is like a party, and it's all about people who are there because they want to be there and not because like their boss told them, hey, if you volunteer to run this aid station, then you don't have to do those extra reports or whatever.
Right, like Bank of America is not going to make their middle management go play in the woods for a photo op.
Yeah.
If I'm in the fucking woods and someone gives me sushi, to me that's equivalent as if I got a gem.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's a surreal experience to be, like just like soaking wet and someone steps out of a bush to give you like, some unagi or something. Well, I want to be clear though, like there's a lot of positive sort of internal good feelings that I get out of trail running and ultra running, but the thing about running is that you're always running a distance of some kind. And distances are measured in numbies.
Shit's true.
And
Yo. I mean, I don't mean to presume, but is it possible? Is it conceivable that if you were to really work at it, that this numbie could go up?
Could go down too, like right? Because you're also trying to get a low numbie.
Yep, you can get a numbie any way you want a numbie to go. You can always be working at making the numbie go that way.
Yeah, if you're feeling like golf, like you can focus on the smaller time.
Yeah, fuck that. Fuck off. No, I want the number to go up. I don't know what you're talking about, Joe. Up. Numbies go up. You can run. Okay. I was going to ask, spoiler alert, one of my questions was like, I understand why this sounds good. I'm convinced. But why such a long distance? Like, that's it. Like, the answer is the numbie. Like you said 50K, and I went, whoa. Like, and if you could say 75K in a year, I'd be like, whoa. And then, like, who knows? That numbie just goes up and up. Who knows how big it could get?
It does, and it is kind of dangerous feeling because I definitely did escalate. Like I went from 5 to 10K to I did the progression. You climb the skill tree to get to the next level, and the distances get like exponentially bigger. Like there's the 50K to the 50 mile to the 100K to the 100 mile, which is sort of the the gold standard. Like the most races top out and most ultra runners sort of stop at that distance. But there's 200 milers. There's people who will like run across America from like one coast to the other, and you can set the goal as large as you want it to be, and then spend like literal years of your life trying to chase it. It can be pretty daunting trying to figure out where your spot is in that, and where the balance is between like, I want to feel good in my body, I want to have a positive rapport with my physicality and get all the good brain chemicals, but still live, a happy life doing other things, versus like, I just got to get that numbie to go up, because right now on Strava it says like 50K, and then there's just a little blank spot next to the 50 mile, and if I can fill that in, then there's the 100K.
Oh yeah, you get a notification on your phone like it's Clash of Clans or some shit.
Yep, yeah, and sometimes you get a crown or you get a trophy, and it's
oh my god, that's a goodie.
So can I ask a progression question?
Yeah.
So you mentioned like falling into it and going from 5K, 10K, and kind of escalating. The progression is an interesting story. The thing I want to hear, and I guess I don't hear about this enough, maybe because I don't seek out these stories. How do you deal with plateauing? Like, what does plateauing feel like? Like, when you're an ultra marathoner, like, the idea that, like, you could plateau and you're, like, only doing, you've been stuck at 30 miles of running for a while, just some embarrassing amount, I guess. I don't know. But, like, how do you handle that? Because that's interesting to me, too, because running is inherently repetitive. So I feel like if I was plateauing and putting in all the effort and, like, the NOMI wasn't going up, I don't know. It would be rough.
I did face that when I switched from road running to trail running. That was a type of plateau, in part because I just wasn't getting any faster. I was getting slower on road running, and I sort of stayed there for a while and just felt increasingly miserable. So just like switching where you're doing it or why you're doing it is a good way to bust out of a plateau, I find. I mean, that's, maybe not the typical plateau that a runner would get themselves into, but it's, like finding a new way to justify why you're doing it or to mark your progression can help you get out of that. Even if it's something like looking at the map of your immediate neighborhood and telling yourself, over the next month, I'm going to try to run as many of these streets as possible. So that if you look at like a heat map of your GPS tracks, then it's just this giant grid. And then you can tell yourself, I've been to every street in this area of my city. With trail running, there's the endless novelty of, like, there's a new trail to explore. There's a new peak over here.
Right.
Or there's an old trail that was built in the 1970s by BC Hydro, and then it just got forgotten except on these old maps. So, like, let's team up with the mountain bikers and go out there and, like, find the trail and, like, clear it out and restore it and take care of it. And then you get to be one of the first, like, 20 people who run it. Just finding...
There's, like, a sense of adventure built into, like, this whole experience.
Yeah, it becomes more about having the experience than, like, pushing yourself to get that better number, whether it's a faster time or a further distance. And at least in my own experience, I found that by focusing on the adventure aspects of it, I sort of tricked myself into going out longer and going farther. If somebody tells me, hey, there's this amazing waterfall that we're going to go and check out on the weekend, do you want to come? And I look at the route map, and it's a longer run than I've ever done. That obviously I would want to talk to the people I'm going with to say, hey, do you think I can hack it? Like, is it really technical, or are you going really fast? And if they say no, well, it's chill. Like, we'll just take it easy. We'll make it an all-day thing. There's no pressure. Then you go out and, maybe you do it. Maybe you do your first 20 miler or 25 miler, or even if it's just 5 miles, but it's a really gnarly climb. Like that can be a new personal best of some kind and a way to break through whatever plateau you're facing.
Man, I could see why me just, like, dragging my stupid body outside my building, once a few times a week, maybe pales in comparison to the fulfillment you feel with what you're describing, which seems amazing and great.
Yeah, it makes me truly feel like a dumbass for spending all this time gaming. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, when I run, I guess when I don't even like running, I just need to shake my head enough so, like, the good chemicals come out, and that's, I guess, my main motivation. But also, I'm not about to, like, rebuild a forgotten trail with, like, people I met in this shared hobby.
Yeah, and
I'm just an asshole. Angela, you mentioned the word technical to describe a trail in the hypothetical when you were, like, concerned, like, will I be able to hack this? What does it mean when a track is technical? Because, like, when I think of running, I think of just, like, throwing my body forward and, like, breathing heavy, and then eventually it's done.
I use 2 special moves called left foot step and right foot step, and I pretty much stick with those. I have not leveled up and spent any skill points on new skills. Those 2 kind of have kept me going this whole time. What are these special moves?
Yeah, does technical mean there's lava?
There can be lava. There there's a pretty famous ultra on Hawaii called the Hurt 100, and I don't know the course exactly, but there could be lava there. Technical, or the technicality of a trail tends to refer to how rugged the terrain is. Whether a trail is something that your park service has made really wide and like wheelchair accessible, and it's flat and groomed so that there's nothing likely to trip you, versus like this is like a mountain bike trail full of roots and rocks, and it's like a 45-degree, angle that you're climbing up the side of a hill or a mountain. So you can't really run it unless you're like insanely fit.
The park service actually dug pits with spikes at the bottom and put a bunch of reeds on top.
Well, some of these races I've done are on actual mountain bike courses, and those folks are nuts. So that's not too far off from some of the things that they build on their courses. But there's like, oh, I'm supposed to cross this river like over like a beam that's like six inches wide, and if I fall, then I'm just in the river.
Yeah, like no one will come help you. You live there now.
Yeah. A technical trail is one where you have to worry about more things to trip over and fall down, basically.
I've gone on such a roller coaster ride in this segment, because I was like, at the beginning, I'm like, one thing that I would never do is ultra marathoning. And then I'm like, one thing that I feel like I've wasted my life not doing is ultra marathoning. And now I'm just like, one thing that I'll never do is run on routes.
Yeah, it's like running, but you trip like all the time. Well, not all the time.
It's like Smash Brothers Brawl. Like, we don't like that.
Yeah.
No tripping.
Yeah.
It's strange what happens to you. I remember my first really technical run when somebody had agreed to coach me. And I remember coming back from that just like soaking wet and all beat up from wiping out down these steep hills with roots, emailing my coach and saying like, am I cut out for this? Because this sucked. And like I hated it, and I feel like I did a really bad job. And she had to sort of like talk me back into it, or reassure me that like anybody would have had a rough time on that trail in the weather I was in. And now, like if I find a really technical trail, I'm like, gimme that, because it's fun. It's different, it's interesting, it's an opportunity to move and scramble and push myself in a way that I don't when I'm just walking down the sidewalk.
Wow.
So, like, I've encountered situations where even on my, like, 3-mile city runs, like a mile and a half in, my hip starts to hurt really bad, and I'm like, well, I can't run on this because that would really aggravate it. Or more sort of gruesomely, in August, I tripped on, like there was a sidewalk pavement thingy that was raised and I didn't see, so I tripped and all my body weight landed on my elbow, and I just like dug like a teaspoon of flesh out of my elbow, and I'm just like, well, I'm 2 miles from my house and I'm bleeding a lot, so I just sort of held my arm way up and walked home. And the second, like the hip time, I just like, well, my hip joint is in incredible pain, and I walked home. And those experiences sucked ass, and I hated them. Yeah, I only had to walk like a mile and a half, 2 miles. What happens when you're like 10 miles out on the technical trail?
Yeah.
And you're just like, ooh, my ankles is touchy today now.
Yeah, yep. And then also, there's a bear.
Yeah.
I mean, not even just the bear, but like, what you're just like, actually something has happened, I can't run anymore.
Yeah.
That is real shit, and that's something, especially on the West Coast, you really have to be prepared for. I feel like at some point I should have mentioned I got into trail running in like the world-class like best place to get into it, where like drive 20 minutes in any direction and like you're in mountains that people would like fly from around the world to run in. And part of being in that environment is you get to learn a lot from people who are doing it constantly. And the number one thing that everyone is always stressing is like safety. Like, always make sure that if you're going on a run, you have like a route plan, that you left with somebody who knows where you're going, knows when you're supposed to be back. If you don't show up after X hours, like, here's what to do. Like, here's how to call search and rescue. Here's like a satellite like spot device that you can use if you're way out in the middle of nowhere with no cell reception, but you still want to be able to send like a text message to somebody that says, hey, I'm hurt, like, and here's my GPS coordinates. Like, you have to really be prepared, even if you're in a situation where you're not that far from like a parking lot or civilization. Yeah, if you like fall and like hurt yourself badly, then you have to have anticipated that could happen and be prepared.
Because then you end up being like, you're the news story, like, this MF for 127 hours themselves. They had cut off their damn arm. Turns out they were near a gas station the whole time. Dummy. Yeah. Why didn't you just say, help me? Yeah,
exactly. And as far as bears go, like there's not any bears, I don't think, around where I'm living now in southern Ontario, but that was a real thing in BC. Like, I ran with bear bells on my bag all the time, so, you could hear people coming, and it sounds like jingles and scares bears away. And carry around
jingles. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, just noise in general. I think to let animals know, like, hey, there's a weird thing coming, so like get out of here. And you run with, like, they're called bear bangers. They're like little miniature flare guns. I think that will it's like a cap gun that makes a big noise that will scare a bear away. But I never had to use those, thank goodness. But yeah, that's real stuff that you have to be prepared to deal with.
I'm really bad at planning, so I would for sure be the MFer who 127 hours them. It would be a shut and dry case.
Sicko mode, sicko mode, sicko mode. 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 So Angela, you mentioned earlier that you're a werewolf sicko. You love the werewolves. Is this the case?
That is definitely the case.
Hell yeah. So, I wanted to ask you if there were any sort of really good examples of like mass market media, like movies, TV shows, like famous books that like really did the concept of a werewolf justice to you. And the reason I'm interested is because this is something I've thought of a lot and has been bugging me for a while in my life. I'm not like a vampire sicko, but I like the idea of vampires as a monster. I think they're cool. But here's the thing, like literally no vampire movie or show or anything has ever like been good to me. They all suck. And it's so weird because like it's an iconic monster that everyone sort of understands is cool. But if someone was like, oh, well, give me an example of that monster being cool in media, you'd be like, oh, there's none. There just ain't none. Because what happens every time is the vampire shows up and is scary, and then like the bumbling protagonist defeats him.
Right.
Like that wouldn't happen because the protagonist has no special moves, and I know that if I were that vampire, I wouldn't be defeated. I would simply use my special moves and win the game. So that out of the way, that's where I'm coming from. So I gotta ask you: Is that the case with werewolves, or like is it ever gotten right?
It is the case with werewolves, maybe even more so. In part because it's so much harder to make a werewolf look good on the screen, at least in the context of movies and TV shows. Whereas with a vampire, depending on what kind you want to portray, you can just make him or her look like a regular guy or woman, and just add some pointy teeth and some red eyes, and you've got a vampire. But werewolf effects are really difficult to do. They're either insanely expensive to do practically, or you can do them CG, and then they just look like cutscenes from a PS2 game. And
yeah. Oh, man.
It's hard to do. And I mean, it is difficult because the people who really care about that stuff, like me, we have such high standards because we've spent so long like picturing what the perfect thing could be like, that nothing that's mass market is ever going to approach that, because mass market's got to appeal to everybody. So you're always going to have a situation where the like level 2 protagonist kills the level 15 werewolf for like insert stupid narrative reason here. His family secret history that, his father and his father's father before him was a werewolf slayer, and he was always going to win. There's always some horseshit like that is going to make sure that, like, no matter how cool the werewolf is, they're going to lose, and they're going to lose in a way that's really dumb.
Yeah, to a child, maybe.
Yeah, precisely. Do a child with some fireworks, or or if the werewolf doesn't lose, then it's because they're trapped in some sort of horrible franchise that is just going to keep going on forever and ever, like the Underworld franchise. So, no, I would say that there isn't any really good mass market monster media in general, or werewolf stuff in particular. All of the stuff that I've seen that I personally enjoyed, not that I would necessarily hold up as like the best representation, because again that is so subjective based on what you're looking for. But all the stuff that I've really liked has been independently produced, whether it's indie comics or short films made by people who just had the equipment and the time at the end of some larger shoot, and they just decided, hey, let's take 3 days out in the bush to make this weird little like disconnected 5-minute short that doesn't really have a plot. It's just got a lot of cool monster stuff in it because we wanted to make it. That's the stuff that really appeals to me, in part because the visions that are presented in them are so unique. They're not like whittled down to the smooth baby carrot nub of whatever is going to appeal to the most profitable quadrant of the audience. It can be whatever weird thing the creators wanted it to be.
It feels like monsters as a concept, like the thing that makes them appealing is that they're like weird and monstrous and like different and unusual.
Yeah.
And every single piece of media with them feels like the exact opposite. It's just like, well, we need to make a fucking movie. What's a thing? Fucking Wolfman. Do that shit. Put it on the screen. Who cares? People will go see it just because it's got a scary thing on the front. Because of that, like so many like iconic things just like are iconic just because like we've sort of been told they are.
Yeah.
And nothing that is actually out there, aside from if you're like really looking for it, is good.
Yeah, like the werewolf movie that most like werewolf fans or horror fans in general will tell you. They'll tell you that this is the best one out there. It came out in 1981, like American Werewolf in London, and there is like maybe 4 or 5 minutes in it that are like objectively great. And they all have to do with like the transformation scene and the practical effects.
Right.
And the rest of it is just like not a very good movie. And like I'm going to get yelled at for saying that probably, because like how dare I go against the scriptures of the fandom. But like people say that it's great because everyone has just always said that it's great, and not because someone really took a look at it and said, hey, this is actually a good story with like interesting characters and like a cool interpretation of this like mythical creature who's used as a clever metaphor for something. It's just like two dipshits backpacking in England and they get messed up, and like that was an excuse to do some really great practical special effects and then like have a shootout in like Piccadilly Circus. Like that's it. It's not a great movie. It just has some great things in it. And that's really the best that I think you're likely to get out of a lot of popular werewolf media. There are some good nugs in there, usually because somebody on the effects team really cared a lot and they managed to sneak in something cool, but it's more about like what can we put out there that is going to like fill seats in like January when nobody wants to go like see a movie.
What you were describing is a phenomenon I'm very familiar with, and the way that I have articulated it is it's movies where you say, damn, that movie was great. Too bad it sucked.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, that is pretty much every good werewolf movie in a nutshell, and there aren't a lot of them. But even the ones that I would recommend to people, like Dog Soldiers or Silver Bullet or When Animals Dream, like they're good to me because I'm looking to extract the goodness from them. But if you were to just show them to somebody who doesn't necessarily care about monsters or werewolves or any of that in general, it's just probably not going to be that interesting to them. But they might like the action scenes, or they might like a given portrayal of a character. But there's always something in it that's just like, oh God, like this part of it sucked enough that I can't say it is objectively a great movie. There's always something wrong with it.
It's got to be like really frustrating because there's so much werewolf content. There's so much.
It's difficult. When I started Werewolf News, the website, like a decade or like 12 years ago or whatever it is, it was a little easier to keep up because, you know, like you could focus pretty deeply on stuff that was coming out because it was like, ooh, there's a rumor that the new X-Files movie is going to have David Duchovny as a werewolf, and like here's like leaked like makeup test photos of what he might look like, and you know, you can write like a 3-page blog post on like all the reasons why this may or may not be true, and then like the next month write like a 5-page blog post being outraged that it just turns out that it was Chris Carter fucking with everybody and deciding it would be funny to release some fake photos, and that was never going to be in the movie. And now you don't have the luxury of doing that because anybody with an iPhone can go out and make their own movie, or you know, anybody with Clip Studio Pro and you know, Twitter can make a serialized comic, and maybe it's garbage or maybe it's good, and you don't know until you like actually spend some time looking at it. And like, I unfortunately don't get paid a salary to do that, so I can't justify doing it to the extent that I want. So a lot of potentially great stuff falls by the wayside, or I don't get a chance to see it because there's just not enough time.
I do believe there is like a level in any given company you can aspire to. When you get the job, you're like, FYI, I'm going to be really focusing on the werewolf stuff. Like, I know I said about what I was going to do, but that has changed.
I have a question. Okay, so we've talked a lot about how a lot of these werewolves are cool. We're there. We've agreed.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, media portraying werewolves is not cool. It's often bad, often sort of soulless, cash grab, nothing. Where they don't consider like what is compelling about this topic. They're just like, well, this is a topic that we make movies about over and over, and it fucking turns a profit, I guess. So let's do it again. So I want to ask you, like, what? And obviously, you wrote on the document like a bunch of themes that like the werewolf sort of myth has baked into it that are often not utilized. Like what would be the fucking like A+ top tier shit? Like what are you looking for? What do you want it to be? Like what would show to everyone like the golden treaty at the core of this concept?
Ooh, that is a really good question, and it's a very difficult one for me to answer because I don't have, like, I have my personal preferences of what I would like to see, but what I'm really craving from a werewolf movie is a movie that is really good that just happens to have a werewolf in it. Like, I don't need the gratification of seeing like the perfect werewolf design that has like, you know, the right color fur and all the right, you know, like just the right amount of like muzzle or whatever. Like that doesn't make the movie excellent to me. It needs to be something that is like a good story, and that I think is what has been lacking in pretty much every werewolf movie that's come out in the last like ever, really, is something that makes you actually care beyond like there's a guy or a girl and they're gonna turn into like an angry dog at some point.
And they're not gonna like it.
Yeah, I mean part of the reason why I'm being so open about this might be that I'm just like so hungry for anything that isn't complete dog shit. But
I have the same problem, I think, with games, except I never, like, tell myself what I actually want. Like, you are articulating a vision. I'm just, like, a dumb idiot that, like, doesn't even know what flavor of slop I like.
I mean, I guess I would say I would like to be surprised, because the themes that I wrote down in the document are things like, these crop up in werewolf media a lot. Man versus nature, the indulgence of the id, lycanthropy as a metaphor for puberty, or something that is a variation of there's a family secret and it turns out this kid is either a werewolf hunter or they are a werewolf, and then it becomes this curse / power fantasy thing. Like those are all like such well-worn tropes in in the werewolf sphere at this point that being surprised by anything that isn't one of those is already like, a huge plus.
I'm a sucker for a family secret. Of all the tropes you said, though, I think that one is the one where I was like, well, it could be a pretty good secret. I don't know.
I won't say no to any of those things because, like I said, I am hungry for anything. But it gets like there's a pretty well trodden like set of paths at this point. If I'm watching a trailer for a new series or a new movie or something, or reading the synopsis of a book or a graphic novel, I can usually tell pretty quickly, oh, it's going to be one of these or it's going to be one of those, because there's just some tells that it's going to be the sort of thing where, oh, here's a young girl who's just turned like 13 or 14 and she's discovering strange new things about her body. It's like, Jesus, okay, like there's some great ways that that's been handled. Like the movie Ginger Snaps, I think is another example of a great werewolf movie that deals with that exact topic. But like, just sort of telegraphing that right from the get-go doesn't bode well for like the enterprise as a whole. Like, there's got to be
like we're going for low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, like, if you're going to make that part of it, then fine, but don't lead with that. Or make it an aspect that you touch on, but like do something else that's interesting with it. Because there are, a lot of other things that you could do with the concept of the werewolf or any monster, or any creature that just doesn't happen at least in like popular media.
So here's the thought. Just don't be afraid to make it full anime. Have it just be like like there's a fighting person and like they get werewolfized and like they're like, oh shit, being a werewolf is like a Super Saiyan to me now. And so it's just like a straight up like action series, but just like also on top of that, sometimes this MF go wolfo mode and has a dope action scene. I think that would be like, I would watch that. That would be cool. It maybe wouldn't like hit the sort of like resonant themes, but I feel like it's something that hasn't been done, at least not for a while.
Oh my God, the roller coaster that I went on emotionally as you were talking just now was wild, because I was so waiting for you to tell me this thing that I'm describing exists, and here's the name of the anime. And now you've told me that as far as you know, it doesn't exist. And
no, it don't.
Well,
I really see the frustration now. I do. This is rough.
Because it would be like so not easy, but like it's not a hard sell.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure people would watch it, and yet.
Yeah, and I feel like there's probably some things out there that are like that, or that are sort of like that, but I'm worried that they're going to suffer from the same sort of like, oh, this is really cool, except for all the rest of this stuff that is actually really bad that so much other werewolf media suffers from.
So you mentioned that like most of it sucks. You live in a horrible hell of your own doing by this fandom.
A pain cave, if you will.
You've pain caved yourself very hard. That said, what was like the most recent thing you have watched or read or consumed where you like felt it was like on the right track, or at least like there was something there that sort of reified why you have this interest and this like fascination with this monster genre?
Two things come to mind. One of them I can really recommend, and the other one maybe not so much. The one that I can really recommend is a graphic novel by Todd McCullough called Who Needs the Moon? He just, like, the other week reissued it. He's the writer and the artist, and he wasn't very happy with how it had been colored previously, so he recolored everything. That, to me, is an example of an excellent horror graphic novel that just happens to be about a werewolf. That captures just about everything that I love about the idea of the werewolf. Like struggling with the idea that you're a monster, ideas of shame, guilt, responsibility, agency, coming to terms with like weird things that are happening to your body, the impact that your condition has on the people around you, the people you care about, and the way that it might empower you over the people that you don't like. And I think it's really gorgeous to look at too. Like, it's just a really enjoyable thing to experience from a visual standpoint. So I would really recommend that. Who Needs the Moon by Todd McCullough. And the other thing that I would like to recommend, but I found a little bit disappointing in the end, is a book called The Last Werewolf by Glenn Duncan. It does a really good job of sort of capturing what it would be like to be like a supernatural creature that lives for potentially centuries and just gets worn out by life and all the excesses and all the indulgences that you might be able to experience as a creature that lives that long and has all this power.
I'm 30 and I feel like
yeah, that's me opening Steam.
And then this protagonist, who's the titular last werewolf, has some experiences that makes him realize that there's a lot more that he wants to experience, because he realizes that he sort of shut himself off from important parts of what it is to be a living creature in the world. And I don't want to get into too many details because I don't want to spoil anything. Because it is a really enjoyable read, but there are some extremely horrific and graphic and very like viscerally exciting and satisfying kind of werewolf scenes in it, where you are seeing things from the perspective of the monster and actually kind of enjoying the terrible things that are happening. And the author does a great job of making that something that you're liking but feeling kind of squeamish about liking. And the reason why I'm kind of bummed by this is that it just, in the last like 20 or 30 pages, it takes a really hard left turn into some character and story decisions that just seem to totally betray like everything that happened in the book before that. So if it's a movie, it's the sort of movie I think where you could probably turn it off like just before like the last act of the last scene and feel like, you know what, there's maybe something good happened there. I'm just going to sort of like headcanon the end there and let it go.
It sounded like it needed an ending, and then they tried.
Yeah, well, I think...
Yeah, seems like a real, this book's great, too bad it sucks scenario.
Yes, very much so.
We're the Anime Sickos, and we're here to say anime is bad in a war crimes way.
Folks, the thing about this episode is that it kicks ass and was good. Angela, thank you so much for being on our fun show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
It's good when the show is good. I don't have anything insightful to say, but that's how I feel.
To me, when the show is bad, that's when I don't like it. I actually cut that part out and don't release it. then the show stays good.
So I, like, throughout the course of the episode, like, already decided I was going to start and stop running several times. I don't know where I landed currently yet. I'm feeling like I agreed to give up already. But everything you said about the sense of community and all that, yeah, those are things I could especially go for now, because it's just the screen every day is the screen on the cog computer.
Yeah, I feel that.
Anyway, Angela, if people want to know more about you, if they want to follow you on the internets, if they want to see your werewolf news, how can they do that? Where do they go?
They can follow me on Twitter at @Quinton or Werewolf News, or they can go to the main werewolf thing I'd send them to is werewolvesversus.com. That's the big anthology project that I'm working on with a bunch of other really cool people. So that's a good thing to check out. Nice. werewolvesversus.com.
Sweet.
Well, this was delightful. Personally, I loved it.
Yeah, it kicks ass. I think that's my take.
Yep. Anyway, thank y'all for listening. This has been Anime Sickos, and I, personally, have been Tom, an Anime Sicko.
I am Joe, an Anime Sicko.
And I'm Angela, an Anime Sicko.
We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to Anime Sickos. I've been Tom, a sicko. You can follow me on Twitter at TomHarrison19. Joe is also a sicko. You can follow him on Twitter at ShariaUncle. You can follow Anime Sickos on Twitter at Anime Sickos, or email us at animesickos@gmail.com. Please leave us a review or something. I don't know. Tell a friend. Anyway, until next time, bye.